My very good friend, Allen Icet, if you'd come up here, I know you have someone you want to introduce. So Chris, if you're a really good friend, you would have talked me out of it. Anyway, with that, it's a pleasure to introduce Bill Randles. I actually met his wife, Bev, before I met Bill. Bev and I had an opportunity to serve on a state chapter of an organization which you're probably familiar with called the Club for Growth, a great organization. And it was through Bev that I again had a chance to meet Bill and become acquainted with him. Well, about a year, I guess a little over a year ago, actually a year and a half ago, I received a phone call from Bill, and he and Bev were going to be in town, want to sit down over lunch and talk to me and my wife Carol about his race for governor. I said, sure, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about running for office and happy to lend you my opinions on things. And I'm sure, like most of you, whenever you meet someone who's running for office for the very first time, you have a chance to sit and talk one-on-one, they talk in broad platitudes. Well, Alan, I want to go to either Jeff City or Washington, D.C. to fight for you. I want to go to one of those places. I want to cut runaway government, runaway spending. I want to trim the budget. I want to do all these things. Well, that's all well and good. But everyone says that, right? I mean, that's just the honest truth. Well, after that meeting, I came away knowing that Bill Randles did not speak to me in broad platitudes. He talked about the specific problems the state of Missouri has. He talked to me about how to solve those problems. He had done his homework. He had a vision for the greatness that this state can and should achieve. Folks, my friends, because I have a lot of friends in the room, what we need in this state is not necessarily just a Republican governor. We need a Republican governor that has that vision for this state. Bill Randles has that vision. So please join me in welcoming Bill to the platform.
I want to thank Allen Icet because from the very first when I started this, he was generous with his encouragement, with his support, because I'm sure he's been to so many of you, and I appreciate it. You know, over the course of my life, I have been a pastor, an attorney, and now I'm going in politics. Yeah, my mother thinks I'm moving steadily down the ladder of life. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me and made me decide to leave the private sector and get into politics was watching a fellow I went to law school with run for and win the presidency. I was at Harvard Law School at the same time as Barack Obama. I know. I was very lonely as a conservative there too. But as he won, I turned to my wife and I said, this is going to be a disaster. And hasn't it been a disaster? And you know, in some ways, it's difficult to get your arms around how profound a disaster it is. I mean, you can use the economic numbers, and they're bad, and I'll talk about some of those in a moment. But the truth is, the crippled economy we're facing is not the disease. It's a symptom. The disease is the loss of freedom. The ever-encroaching government suffocating every aspect of our economy, every aspect of our personal lives. And as a result, our economy has ground to a halt. And here in Missouri, we've suffered more than most states from this model because Jay Nixon, in a different accent and different style, has just taken Obama's model of crony capitalism, control, Chicago-style spoils politics, and incorporated them here. And from his perspective, he's been very effective. But from our perspective, well, Missouri is now near the bottom in every measurable category. Economic growth, job creation. In December, Missouri lost the most jobs in the country. Jay Nixon said, well, it's due to seasonal variations. I didn't know we were the only state that had Christmas. In 2010, Missouri lost 90,000 net jobs, third worst in the country. A report came out about 2 weeks ago that found Missouri had the worst economic conditions of any state in the Midwest. Yes, that includes Illinois and Michigan. We have two of the worst school districts in the country. As a matter of fact, about a month ago, an Obama administration official said Kansas City has the worst school district in the country. Congratulations, St. Louis. You know, when I was growing up in Arkansas, we used to always say, well, thank goodness for Mississippi. And you know, we as Republicans have to be careful when we accept Democratic talking points, because sometimes we get lulled into the language and we quickly find ourselves moving into the policies. Let me tell you a phrase I never want to hear another Republican politician say. Jobs bill. There's no such thing. Government does not create jobs. The private sector does. But we have engaged in the largest economic experiment in the history of mankind over the last 3 years to prove this point. When you roll together stimulus, TARP, loan guarantees, and the various machinations of the Fed, we have pumped something like $7 trillion into the economy to create jobs. Have we created any jobs? No. And here in Missouri, we pumped hundreds of millions in loan guarantees and special deals through the Department of Economic Development, tax credits, that sort of thing. We're one of the leading states in the nation for tax credits. And interestingly, we're one of the leading states in the nation for losing jobs. Now, do you think these things are just coincidences? You have a pattern of failure that we have followed the federal government into, and we have to reverse. And earlier I was trying to think of an analogy to what happens when the federal government enters an area of the economy. And I was a little reluctant to use this analogy because I picked it up growing up in the Ozarks, and you're a very sophisticated crowd here in St. Louis County. But earlier today I tried it on a smaller group and they seemed to get it. When the government moves into an area of the economy, it's like pulling a broken down Chevy onto your front lawn. Oh, I see some of you get this. Good, good. It's like pulling a broken down Chevy on your front lawn. And when you do that, everything underneath dies. And that's what's happened when the government has moved into the housing industry, into the financial industry, and now they're moving into healthcare. We have to have a plan to move government back out of these areas. I believe government needs to focus on what it does well and stay out of the rest of the areas. Put quite simply, I believe there's nothing wrong with the economy that can't be fixed by getting the boot of government off the neck of the private sector. But we're in a Republican primary season. And in a Republican primary season, you can count on politicians telling you three things. They want to talk about God, they want to tell you they like guns, and they're in favor of small government. Well, I reverence my God, I'm real attached to my guns, and I love small government. But just saying it doesn't make it so. You have to have a plan to get there. Do you have any doubt that Obama and Nixon have been executing a clear-cut plan for the last 3 years? This control didn't happen by accident. Let me offer you a fact to amaze and depress your friends with. Every day that the Obama administration has been in office, they have passed 10 new federal regulations. 365 days a year. So you're less free in 10 ways today than you were yesterday. And you will be less free in 10 ways tomorrow than you are today. This isn't an accident. This growth of government into every aspect of our lives is constant, and it's a plan. To fix it, we conservatives have to have a plan. But I get frustrated as a conservative because I think often conservatives get elected to office, we move into the house the liberals built, and think all we get to do is dust. We have to renovate. We have to dramatically change things. Let me offer you a few specifics tonight to get Missouri back on track and to permanently change how our government works for the long term. First, we have to become the most business-friendly state in the nation, and it's attainable because we got here through policies. We can fix it through policies. The key elements there are we must become a right-to-work state. There were 22 right-to-work states at the beginning of this year. During this so-called recovery, all the net job gains have been in the 22 right-to-work states. Interestingly, in the last census, all of the growth of representation was in the 22 right-to-work states. We have a broken model and a failed model. A failed model and a successful model. We need to move from the failed model to the successful model. Second thing we need to do is replace the corrupt income tax with a broad-based sales tax. The income tax is the most efficient tool of political corruption ever devised. Politicians love it and they can't resist it because it's the only way for me to take from you, give to you, punish you, reward you, and make somebody else pay for it. Politicians have to go cold turkey on it. The third thing we have to do is comprehensive judicial reform. Our courts are one of the most inefficient, expensive, and hostile to business in the country. We have to have comprehensive reform from the way we select judges to the way we retain them, and we must go to a loser-pays tort system. And finally, we must have comprehensive regulatory reform. And unlike other conservatives who like to complain about regulations, but we don't really do anything about them, let me give you a plan. Between election and inauguration, my team will go through the entire regulatory law of the state of Missouri. Every regulation that's hostile to business, out of date, too expensive, or just plain stupid, we're going to strike it. We're going to give this package to the legislature. We're going to say, pass this as the regulatory law of the state of Missouri, and then do something no state's ever done. Take away the power of the regulators to make any new rules. In one fell swoop, we will take a dramatic step back to constitutional government. From now on, in the state of Missouri, anybody who can pass a rule that will bind you will be someone you vote for, you can vote against, and it answers to you. It will be slow, it will be public, it will be messy, just the way the Constitution meant it to be. And I want to say a final thing about our long-term future. We must fix our educational system. I grew up in a trailer park. My parents didn't finish high school. Our family business was a roadside fruit market. And yet, when I was 27 years old, I was graduating from the finest law school in the world. Education opened every door for me. And now, here I stand at this stage of my life in front of you good people running for the highest office in the state. And this room is full of examples of folks who started off in modest circumstances and had doors open to them because education was available. We must go to a true school choice program in Missouri that returns power to the parents. And let me say a final word about freedom. The Republican Party is the only political party in the history of the world that was founded to secure other people's freedoms. The white men who founded the Republican Party already had freedom, but they put at risk their reputations, their fortunes, and in many cases their very lives to defend other people's freedoms. Now this is a noble tradition. And now in this time we are called to do something similar. When future generations look back at us, they're going to ask one question. What did we do to protect freedom? I'm asking you to join me in this fight. We can fix this state, and we can shine a light from Missouri to the rest of the nation as to how you restore freedom. My name is Bill Randles. I'm running for governor. I'm asking for your vote, and I need your support.